Greetings, fellow musicologists. I'm Alex Tamulis. Welcome to the channel. Today we look into Cliff Burton's album collection. It's his 60th birthday today, and the best way to remember him is through his art, his music. He was cruelly robbed of his life in a freaky accident that would change the life of Metallica forever. And he was only 24, but despite passing at such a young age, he's remembered as one of the masters of the instrument, the Jimi Hendrix of the bass, as Jason Newsted puts it, the Bach of bass guitar. So his importance to rock and metal is beyond imagination. So I thought it'd be good for us to delve into what could have inspired him as a musician, the sounds, the arrangements, the sonic experiences of other works and artists that he admired. So things that could really lead us into understanding his genius a little bit more. And there's a beautiful video of his father, Ray Burton, the late Ray Burton, and he's going through Cliff's vinyl collection. And it's a great video to delve into his preferences within hard rock and metal mostly. And what's conspicuous about Cliff is how broad his musical preferences were. You can tell that he was a listener, but not only that, you could tell that he really admired music as a whole. So that's at least how I feel towards him. When I look at his vinyl collection, I understand that he sees music as an entity. So it's kind of like this blank canvas, and everything is a color. Like every genre is a color that can be combined. Things can be overlapped. So he doesn't really divide or limits the categories of music, As long as you're grasping the colors that you're given and you're really thinking about the spectrum as a whole, you have prototypes, you have similarities, but you have to use things as tools. So this will give you inspiration and ideas to draw from. So even the way that Cliff's dressed, he was unique in his combinations. So we can say that he was authentic, real. He was true to his beliefs, and we can totally parallel that way of thinking to his album collection. So his father, Ray, he gave us a beautiful video where he shows us the albums. So I really wanted to be able to access, like what did he like, to just feel closer through music. And that totally helped me. And even if there's just one person watching this video, I hope it helps you in your journey. So I'm willing to spend some time discussing some of his choices. It'll be a longer video, so just sit back, relax. Let's go through this road of blues, rock and roll, hard rock, heavy metal, even punk, some extreme metal, classical music. The first album that Ray Burton shows us is the classic, The Number of the Beast. And that is such a relief to me because I'm a huge Steve Harris fan, and he's one of my bass heroes. And Cliff also liked Iron Maiden, so that's awesome. And what can we say about The Number of the Beast? Well, it's usually ranked as one of the greatest heavy metal bands and albums of all time. So I think Martin Popoff, his list, the greatest 500 greatest heavy metal albums of all time, The Number of the Beast is one of the highest ranking ones. And it's the birth of Iron Maiden as we know it, a relentless metal machine lifted to soaring new heights with the arrival of Bruce Dickinson. So it's, operatic. That performance, Bruce's performance just made him an instant metal icon and launched the band into metal stardom. Maiden took the basic blueprint of Judas Priest, from the late 70s, aggressive tempo, twin guitar interplay, high vocals, high pitched vocals, and then it just cranked everything up a little faster, a little louder. So, second album is Power Slave, and in my opinion, the best Iron Maiden album. The Number of the Beast, it came out in 1982. Peace of Mind in 83, and then Power Slave in 84. So Cliff was pretty much on par with Maiden discography back then. Somewhere in Time was released 2 days after Cliff's passing, 35 years ago, somewhat. So time flies. But another Maiden albums that we see, we have a single there, a maxi single. It's called Flight of Icarus. It contains 2 songs, the title track and a Montrose cover. Really great cover. You need to listen to this song. It always reminds me a bit of Deep Purple with Highway Star. And this Montrose song is called I've Got the Fire. And the original was sung by Sammy Hagar. Man, what a treat, to be able to listen to this tune, the analog vibe of the recording. Wow, it always gives me goosebumps. And after that, we quickly, I think we see Maiden Japan, so it's, Paul Di'Anno era here. You can also listen to these tracks on YouTube if you want to explore more. But the good thing about these live recordings is that you get to hear the bass. So sometimes you need to learn songs by ear, and it might be easier to pick more intricate parts by listening to the live recordings, because sometimes the studio versions, the bass is just buried in the mix. Anyhow, switching to the next option, we have Rainbow. Rainbow, a live album there, and Rainbow's phenomenal. I've probably listened to Rising hundreds of times. And Long Live Rock and Roll, Terror Woman, Stargazer, Kill the King. Wow, absolute classics. Rainbow quickly developed into one of the 70s most successful metal bands, early metal bands. They had charismatic, obviously great frontman Ronnie James Dio, one of the best voices in metal. Together with Ritchie Blackmore, they have produced a string of highly acclaimed albums, still considered staples of their genre. But the band changed their musical approach numerous times following Dio's departure. It kind of confused and alienated some of the audience. But one can't live a life without spending time listening to the Dio era albums. So please make sure you do, just like Cliff did. And this shows how eclectic he was. We see now a Misfits album. It's a compilation album called Legacy on Brutality. It's got 13 tracks, and it was released in 1985. It's got unreleased tracks they originally recorded in 1978 during the Static Age sessions, but for many reasons that I won't be able to cover here, they were released only in 1985, and Danzig overdubbed some guitars and bass, and some tracks you can tell that the bass was tuned differently, a few cents down, a few cents up from the original guitars. Nothing that takes away from the experience. My favorite track from this record is called Where Eagles Dare. Back then, when I was teenager, I was trying to listen to these things. It took me some time and the right mindset for me to listen to this type of music. But playing along with the tracks really helped my appreciation for these tracks. Whenever you play, you engage differently with the tunes. And you can hear some of these tunes on the 1986 compilation from Misfits. And, it's a great thing for you to listen to whenever you're into that mood of 80s punk. Now we quickly see the cover of Motorhead, Bomber, which came out in 1979. Good things about it: the classic formation with Lemmy, Festetti, and Filthy Animal Taylor. The production, I think, was Jimmy Miller. And 3 great songs here. Dead Men Tell No Tales, Stone Dead Forever, and the title track Bomber. So it's the last one on the album, and closing with that fast-paced, rock and roll infused Lemmy's rage, rawness. The chorus seems to be like an influence to the Four Horsemen by Metallica on Kill 'Em All, or the Mechanics with Megadeth. Now, from Bomber, we switch to Another Perfect Day. That marks the departure of Fast Eddie Clarke. Motorhead hired Brian Robertson of Thin Lizzy, and his tenure lasted just for this album. But as Lemmy claims, that guitar player was the right guy at the right time. And Filthy Animal Taylor was the drummer. He was also a huge Lizzy fan. And this album gave Motorhead a new dimension. It combined the flawless production from Tony Platt into a more accessible sound for the rock masses. So we can all hear Lemmy's bass, and I can totally see the influence that the distorted bass sound had on Cliff Burton, the Rickenbacker type of classic sound. You can picture Cliff playing the vinyl, learning the riffs, and rocking out the bass, just playing, engaging various distortion levels. Now we have Mercyful Fate. It's the Mercyful Fate suite now. You have Nuns Have No Fun. It's a censored cover. And he also shows us Don't Break the Oath. Well, the first one, the Nuns one, is an EP. It's the first released by Mercyful Fate. It came out in 1982, actually the year that I was born. It's a 4-track EP that was released independently. It was later reissued by Metal Blade in 1987 as part of the Beginning compilation. It's got some really awesome tracks, but A Corpse Without a Soul is my favorite. You know, the riffs are really fun for you to play along. It reminds me of like classic Judas Priest. Mercyful Fate is a true heir of that 70s Priest era. Don't Break the Oath, heavy metal classic. I bought the album in 1997, and I remembered that I had to hide it from my parents because the cover would scare the hell out of them, you know, with all the fire. The lyrical content of the album has inspired the black metal movement, but the arrangements are more like traditional heavy metal with some progressive elements. So you have some time signature changes. For example, Night of the Unborn would be an example. Track number 2 begins with this cool bass, this cool drum pattern. It's one of the greatest, let's say, extreme metal albums of all time. It's a true classic. Now we have another classic of the New Album era. We have Angel Witch. The first song has a phenomenal bass line. It's super fun to play. The chorus is catchy. It's got the classic tropes and elements from that era. And I love to listen to these albums. You know, they have that classic analog tape warmth, you know. This one has the bass mixed super loud, so it's even better for me to really try and learn the lines. Then we get to see Armored Saint. They were really close to Metallica. You know, the singer John Bush was actually invited to be Metallica's lead singer. And if I'm not mistaken, he declined for various reasons. He was really attached to his band. You know, they had a great project. And James was also bringing more power to the songs, you know, with his pipes and his techniques. So, you know, everything worked out the way it was supposed to do. Next up, we have Tygers of Pan Tang. Spellbound is an absolute classic. You know, it's got the classic New Album mix. The bass is audible, and it sits really well with the other instruments, so it's a real treat to listen to that album. It reminds me of Rainbow, with a hint of Motorhead, maybe Saxon. Add a little Def Leppard there, and you've got Tygers. The song Hellbound has that classic New Album intro, high-pitched vocals, power chords, but it's got this really interesting combination of major and minor feels, depending on the section of the song. So which is fun to listen, to this day. It's interesting elements. Don't Stop By. It's a great song. It's got some Judas Priest vibe with a more mainstream oriented chorus. It's got clean guitars, but he shows the cover of that single. But you should listen to the whole Hellbound. It's a really fun experience. And now to wrap up, we see Gary Moore. He loved to listen to him, and we can also tell that he liked to listen to live records. So I'm going to talk about Rockin' Every Night, which is the one that I listened the most by Gary Moore. It showcases his chops, his talent. He's got a very strong blues and rock and roll influence, but he's an amalgamation, and he adds this modern, well, obviously 1983 modern twist to blues and rock and roll. Traditional elements of classic guitar, but a heavier distorted thing. So it's kind of like the hard rock. It's fast-paced, speed metal, early speed metal, but mostly hard rock. And Gary Moore was in Thin Lizzy a few times. Obviously, Black Rose, you have to listen to that album. And I think Thin Lizzy was one of Cliff's favorite bands. The hard rocker Phil Lynott was just a true inspiration. And you can see by his collection, he's got pretty much the entire discography of Thin Lizzy. He's got, oh my God, he's got Jailbreak, Renegade, Chinatown, Rockers, Fighting, many live albums. But my favorite Thin Lizzy album is Thunder and Lightning. It came out in 1983, and obviously it was a source of inspiration for Metallica with Ride the Lightning, the cover. The title track of this album is a powerhouse. Phil Lynott sounds like Lemmy, and the song has that speed metal vibe. The lyrical themes are very much rock and roll meets hard rock meets the speed of heavy metal. And you can't get any better than that, and it's the best way to close the video. I mean, John Sykes playing guitars, right? Please listen to that record whenever you got some time. Well, that's it for me, fellow musicologists. Happy 60th birthday, Cliff. I can't really measure how much you've influenced me. And I thought it was just best to really comment on your vinyl collection to try and understand a little bit more about you. And I think it's the best gateway to as a platform to your playing. Obviously, apart from your songs, from your very piece of art. Cliff's legacy, man, your music is indeed what has brought people to, the masses, to various situations and getting together and learning more and being better human beings. So music is indeed what music does. I am signing out. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye now.